Hello everyone, my name's Stonesy Boy and welcome back to with Stonesy. Today we are reading chapters 9 to 10 and pages 47 to 64. Now, as I said last time, this is 17 pages with only one break. So, it's going to be kind of hard for the reading, but hey, that's okay. We isn't here for the easy reading. We is here to listen to me do the reading. But of course, it's less pages than normal. So, without further ado, let's begin. Chapter 9. I do not remember much of this time, except that many suns rose and set. I thought that I was going to do now as I was alone. I did not leave the village, not until I had eaten all the albalones did I leave, and then only I gather more. Yet I do remember the day that I decided I would never live in the village again. It was morning with a thick fog and the sound of the far-off waves breaking on the shore. I had never noticed for how many silent the village was. The fog kept in and out in the empty huts. It made shapes as it drifted in, and they reminded me of all the people who were dead and those who were gone. The noise of the surf seemed to their voices speaking. I sat for a long time seeing these shapes and hearing the voices until the sun came out of the fog and vanished. Then I made a fire against the wall of the house. When it was burned to the earth, I started a fire in another house. Thus, one by one, I destroyed them all so there was only ashes left to mark the village of Gallowsat. There was nothing to take away from me except the basket of food. I therefore traveled fast, and before night, I fell and reached the place where I had decided to live until the ship returned. This place lay in the headlight in the half league of the west of the Coral Cove. It was a large walk on the headland and two stunted trees. Behind the walk was a clear place about 10 steps across, when I was sheltered from the wind, from which I could see the harbor and the ocean. A spring of water flowed from the ravine nearby. That night, I climbed into the rock and sleep. It was a flat on top and wide enough for me to stretch out. Also, it was to high the ground, so I did not need to fear of the wild dogs while I was sleeping. I had not seen them again since the day they killed Ramo, but I was sure that they would soon come back to my new camp. The rock was also a safe place to store the food I had brought with me and everything I should gather. Since it was still winter and any day the ship might return, there was still no use to store food I would need. This gave me time to make weapons to protect myself from the dogs, which I felt would sometimes attack me, to kill them all one by one. I had a club and I found one of them in the huts, but I needed a bow and arrow and a large spear. The spear I had taken from the slain dog was too small. It was good for spearing fish with a little ease. The laws of Gallowsat forbade the making of weapons with the women of my tribe, so I went out to search for any that might have been left behind. I went first where the village had been and shifted the ashes as spearheads, and then, finding none, to the place where the canoes were hidden, believing the weapons might have been stored there in the food and water. I found nothing in the canoes under the cliff, then remembered the chest of alutes that brought to the shore. I set out for the Coral Cove, but I had seen the chest buried in the battle, but I did not remember where the hunters had taken it with them when they fled. The beach was empty except for the rows of seaweed washed in by the storm. The tide was out, and I looked at the place where the chest had lain. It was below the ledge or lape, and I had stood on while they watched the battle. The stand was smooth, and I dug many small holes with the stick. I dug in a wide circle, thinking that the storm might have covered it with sand. Near the center of the circle, a stick hit something hard, which I was sure was rock, but as I dug deeper with my hands, I saw it was a black lid of the chest. All morning I worked, moving the sand away. The chest lay deep in the washing of the waves, and I did not try to dig it out, but I only could raise the lid. As the sun rose high, the tide came rushing by the beach and filled the hole with sand, which each wave covered the chest deeper until it was completely hidden. I stood in the place, bracing myself against the waves so that I would not have to look for it again. When the tide turned, I began to dig with my feet, working them down, and then with my hands. The chest was filled with the beads and bracelets and earrings of many colors. I forgot the spearheads I had came for. I held each of the trinkets in the sun, turning them as they caught the light. I put on the longest string of beads. They were blue, and a pair of blue bracelets, which exactly fitted my wrist, and I walked down the shore, admiring myself. I walked the whole length of the cove, the beads of the bracelets making some twinkling sounds. I felt like a bride of a chief as I walked there by the waves. I came to the foot of the trail where the battle had fought. Suddenly, I remembered those who had died there and the men who had brought the jewels I was wearing. I went back to the chest. For a long time I stood beside it, looking at the bracelets and beads hanging from my neck, so beautiful and bright in the sun. They do not belong to the alutes, I said. They belong to me. But even as I said this, I knew that I could never wear them again. And one by one I took them off. They also took the rest of the beads from the chest. When I walked through the waves and flung them all far away, out into the deep water, there was no iron spearheads in the chest. I closed the lid and covered it with sand. I looked long at the bottom of the trail, but with nothing there I gave up my search. For many days I did not think of the weapons again, not until the wild dogs came out one night and sat under the rock and howled. They were gone at daylight, but not far. During the day I could see them slinking through the brush, watching me. At night they came back to the headland. I buried what was left of my supper, but they dug it up, snarling and fighting among themselves over the scrap. And then they began to pace back and forth at the foot of the rock, sniffing the air. They could smell my tracks, and I knew it was coming somewhere near. For a long time I lay on the rock while they trotted down around below me. The rock was high, and they could not climb it, but I was still fearful. As I lay there, I wondered what would happen to me if I went against the law of our own tribe and forbade the making of weapons by women. If I did not think of that at all, made those things which I have to protect myself, would the four winds blow from the four directions of the world and smother me as I made weapons? As I made the weapons? Or would the earth tremble, as many said, and bury me beneath its falling rocks? Or as others said, would the sea rise over the island in a terrible flood? Would the weapons break in my hands at the moment when my life was in danger, which is what my father had said? I thought about these things for 2 days, and on the third night, when the wild dogs returned to the rock, I made up my mind, and no matter what befell me, I would make the weapons. In the morning, I set about it, though I felt very fearful. I wished that the sea elephant's tusk for the tip of the spear, because it was hard and the right shape. There were many of these animals on the shore near my camp, but I lacked a weapon in which to kill one. Our men usually hunted in a strong net made of bull kelp, which they threw over the animal while it slept. To do this, they had 3 men that were needed, and even if the sea elephant often dragged the net into the sea and got away, I used it instead of the root tree, which shaped into a point and hardened into fire, which I bound in a long shaft of green sinews of a seal I killed with a rock. The bows and arrows took more time and caused me great difficulty. I had a bowstring, but wood would be bent and yet would have the proper strength that was not easy to find. I searched the ravine for several days before I found it. Trees, being very scarce on the island of the Blue Dolphins, wood for arrows that's easier to find, and also the stone for the tips and feathers for the ends of the shafts. Gathering these things was not the most of the trouble. I had seen the weapons made, and I knew little about it. I've seen father sitting in the hut in the winter's nights scrapping wood in the shafts, shipping the scones in the tip, and tying the feathers. Yet I'd watched him and really seen nothing. I'd watch, but not with the eye of one who would ever do it. For this reason, I took many days and had many failures before I fashioned a bow and arrows that could be used. Wherever I went now, wherever the shore I gathered shellfish or the ravine or the water, I carried this weapon in a sling in my back. I practiced it with it and also with the spear. The dogs did not come to the camp at the time I was making the weapons, though every night I could hear them howling. Once after the weapons were made, I saw the leader of the pack, the one with the gray hair and yellow eyes, watching me from the brush. I had gone for the ravine for the water as he stood at the hill in the spring, looking down at me. He stood very quiet, and only his head showing over the top of the chala bush. He was too far away for me to reach him with the arrow. Wherever I went during the day, I felt secure with my new weapons. I waited patiently at the time when I could use them against the wild dogs that killed Ramo. I did not go to the cave where they had lair, since I was sure that they would soon come to the camp. Yet every night I climbed onto the rock to sleep. After the first night I spent there, which was uncomfortable because of the uneven places on the rock, I carried dry seaweed up on the beach and made a bed for myself. It was a pleasant place to stay. There was a headland, the stars were bright overhead, and I lay and counted the ones that I knew gave names so many that I did not know. In the morning, the gulls flew out from their nests in the crevices of the cliff. They circled down to the tide pools where they stood first on one leg and then the other, splashing the water over themselves and combing their hairs with curved beaks. When they flew off down the shore to look for food beyond the kelp bed, pelicans were already hunting, soaring high over the clear water, diving straight down as they sighted a fish to strike the sea in a great splash that I could hear. I also searched the otter hunting in the kelp. These shy little animals had come back soon after the Aleuts had left, and now there seemed to be as many of them as before. The early morning sun shone like a gold in their glossy pelts. Yet as I lay there on the high rock looking at the stars, I thought of the ship which belonged to the white men, and at dawn, as light spread across the sea, my first glance was toward the little harbor at Coral Cove. Every morning I would look for a ship there, thinking that it might come at night. At each morning I would see nothing except birds flying over sea. When we were people in Gallasat, I was up before sun and busy with many things. But now that there was little to do, I did not leave the rock until the sun was high, and I would eat and then go to the spring and take a bath in the warm water. Afterwards, I went down to the shore and would gather a few abalones and sometimes spear a fish. For my supper, before darkness, I climbed under the rock and watched the sea until it slowly disappeared in the night. The ship did not come, and thus winter passed the spring. Chapter 10. Summer was the best time on the island of the Blue Dolphins. The sun was warm and the winds blew milder out of the west, sometimes to the south. It was during these days that the ship might return, and now spent most of my time on the rock, looking out for the high headland into the east toward the city, where my people had gone. Across the sea were never ending. Once I was watched as a small object which looked some small object when I took the ship, and a stream of water rose from it, and I knew it was whale spouting. During the summer days, I saw nothing else. This first storm of winter ended in my hopes. If the white men's ship were coming for me, it would have been come during the time of good weather. Now, I would have waited until the winter was gone, maybe longer. The thought of being alone on the island while so many suns rose from the sea, went slowly back down to the sea, filled my heart with loneliness. I have not felt so lonely before, because I was sure the ship would return as Matasep said it would. Now my hopes were dead. Now I was really alone. I could not eat much, nor could I sleep without dreaming terrible dreams. The storm blew out of the north, sending big waves against the island and winds so strong that I was unable to stay on the rock. I moved to my bed to the foot of the rock, and for protection kept the fire going throughout the night. I slept there 5 times. The first night, the dogs came and stood outside the ring made by fire. I killed 3 of them with arrows, but not their leader. They did not want to come. On the 6th day, when the storm had ended, I went to the place where the canoes had been hidden, and let myself down over the cliff. The part of the shore was sheltered from the wind, and I found the canoes that just had been left. The dried food was still good, but the water was stale, so I went back to the spring and filled with fresh basket. I had decided during the days of the storm, when I had given up hope of seeing the ship, and I would take the canoes and go to the country and lay toward the east. I remember how Kimki, before he had gone, and asked the advice of the ancestors that had lived so many ages in the past, who had come on the island from the country, and likewise advised from Zuma and the medicine man who had power over the wind and seas. But these things I could not do, for Zuma had been killed by the Aleuts, and all my life I had never seen able to speak with the dead, though many times I had tried. Yet I cannot say that I was really afraid as I stood there on the shore. I knew that my ancestors would cross the sea in their canoes, coming to the place where it lay beyond. Kimki, too, had crossed the sea, but not nearly so skilled with a canoe as these men. But I must say that whatever might befall me or the endless waters did not trouble me. It meant far less than the thought of staying on the island, alone, without a home or companions, pursued by wild dogs, where everything reminded me of those who were dead and those who had gone away. Of the 4 canoes stored against the cliff, I chose the smallest, which was very heavy because it would carry 6 people. The task had faced me with to push it down the rocky shore and into the water, the distance 4 or 5 times its length. This I did by first removing the large rocks in front of the canoe. I then filled these holes with pebbles, and along this path laid down the long strips of kelp, making a slippery bed. The shore was steep, and once I got to the canoe to move on its own weight, it slid down the path and into the water. The sun was in the west when I left the shore. The sea was calm behind the high cliffs. Using the 2-bladed paddle, I quickly skirted the south part of the island. As I reached the sand pit and the wood struck, I was paddling from the back of the canoe before you can go faster kneeling there, but I could not handle it in the wind. Kneeling in the middle of the canoe, I paddled hard and did not pause until I had gone through the tides that run fast in the sand pit. There are all many small waves, and I was soon wet. But I came out of the behind the spit of the spray, lessened the waves grew long and rolling. Though I would have been easier to go as they slanted, this would have taken me in the wrong direction. I therefore kept them on my left hand, as well as the island, which grew smaller and smaller behind me. At dusk I looked back. The island of the Blue Dolphins had disappeared, and this was the first time I felt afraid. There was only hills and valleys of water around me now. When I was in the valley, I could see nothing but when the canoe rose out, only the ocean stretching away and away. Night fell, and I drank from the basket. The water cooled my throat. The sea was black, and there was no difference between it and the sky. The waves made no sound among themselves, only faint noises as they went under the canoe or stuck against it. Sometimes the noises seemed angry at the others, sometimes they like people laughing. I was not hungry because of my fear. The first star made me feel less afraid. It came out low in the sky and was in front of me, toward the east. Other stars began to appear all around. It was the one I kept my gaze upon. It was in the figure we call the serpent, a star, and which shone green, and which I knew. Now and then it was hidden by mist, yet it was always come out brightly again. Without the star I would have been lost, for the waves never change. They came always from the same direction, and in the manner they kept pushing me away from this place. I wanted to reach. For this reason, the canoe behind made a path in the black water like a snake, but somehow I kept moving towards the star which is shown to the east. The star rose high, and I kept to the North Star on my left hand, and the one called the star that does not move. The wind grew quiet, since it is the died down of the night. It was half over. I knew how long I'd been traveling, and how far away the dawn was. About the time I found the canoe was leaking. Before dark, I emptied one of the baskets in which food was stored and used it to dip out of the water and came over the sides. The water was now moved around my knees so as not form the waves. I stopped paddling and worked on the basket until the bottom of the canoe was almost dry. Then I searched around, feeling the dark along the smooth planks, and found the place near the bow, where the water was seeping through the crack as long as my hand was the width of the finger. Most of the time it was out to the sea. It leaked whenever the canoe dipped towards the waves. The places between the planks were filled with black pitch, which we gathered along the shore. Lacking this, I tore a piece of fiber from my skirt and pressed it into the crack, which held back the water. Dawn broke in the clear sky, and the sun came out of the waves. I saw it was far off on my left. During the night, I drifted south in the place I wished to go, so I changed my direction and paddled along the path made by the rising sun. There was no wind on the morning, and the long waves went quietly under the canoe. I therefore moved faster than during the night. I was very tired and more hopeful than I had been since I left the island. If the good weather did not change, I would cover many leagues before dark. Another night, another day, might bring me within sight of a shore toward which I was going. Not long after dawn, while I was thinking of this strange place, I would like what would look like. The canoe began to to leak again. This crack could be between the same planks, but it was a larger one than those close to where I was kneeling. The fiber tore from my skirt and pushed into the crack, held back most of the water, which siphoned in whenever the canoe rose and fell in the waves. Yet it would probably see that the planks were weak from one end to the other, probably from the canoe being stored in so long in the sun, and that they might open along their whole length and the waves grew rougher. It was suddenly clear to me that it was dangerous to go on. The voyage would take 2 more days, perhaps longer. By turning back to the island, I would not have nearly so far travel. I still could not make up my mind to do so. The sea was calm, and I had come far. The thought of turning back after all this labor was more than I could bear. Even greater was the thought of the deserted island I would return to, of living there alone and forgotten. For how many suns and how many moons? The canoe drifted idly in the calm sea while these thoughts went over and over in my mind. When I saw the water seeping through the crack again, I picked up the paddle, and there was no choice except to turn back toward the island. I knew this was only best of fortunate which I could ever reach it. The wind did not blow until the sun was overhead. Before the time I got covered a good distance, pausing only when it was necessary to dip water from my canoe. With the wind, I went more slowly, and I had to stop more often because of the water spilling over the sides. But the leak did not grow worse. It was my first good fortune. The next was when the swarm of dolphins appeared. They came swimming out of the west. But as they saw the canoe turned around in a great circle and began to follow me, they swam up slowly and so close I could see their eyes, which were large and the color of the ocean. When they swam up ahead of the canoe, crossing back and forth in front of it, diving in and out as if they were waving a piece of cloth, and their broad snouts. The dolphins were animals of good omen. It made me happy to have them swimming around the canoe, and though my hands had begun to bleed from the chafing of the paddle, which watching them made me forget the pain, I was very lonely and they appeared, but now I felt as if I had friends with me and not feel the same. The Blue Dolphins left me shortly before dusk. They left as quickly as they had come, going on to the west, but in a long time I could see the last of the sun shining on them. After night fell, I could see them in my thoughts, and it was because of that I kept paddling and wanted to lie down and sleep. More than anything, I was with the Blue Dolphins that took me back home. Fog came in the night, yet at the same time I could see the star that stands high in the west, this red star called Maggot, which star of the figure, which looks like a crawfish and known by that name. The crack of the planks grew wider, and I'd stop often to fill it with fiber and dip out the water. The night was very long, longer than the night before. Twice I dozed kneeling where the canoe, though I was more afraid than I had ever been. When the morning broke clear, in front of me was the dim line of the island, like the great fish sunning itself in the sea. I reached it before sun was high, and the sand pit in its ties bore me into the shore. My legs were stiff from kneeling, and the canoe stuck in the sand. I fell when I rose and to climb out. I crawled in the shallow water and up the beach. There I lay a long time, hugging the sand in happiness. I was too tired to think of the wild dogs. Soon I fell asleep. And that is the end of today's episode of the book. That was a very kind read, honestly. It was very relaxing, more than anything else. But yeah. Today we read chapters 5 to 8. Yeah, 5. No. Today we read chapters 9 to 10. Which were pretty good. Only 2 breaks, but what can you do? But next time we will be reading chapters 11 to 13. And if you're pretty good at math, or you're going to pause the episode right now and check what episodes, next time we will be reading pages 65 to 81. We're real close to the triple digits, and good news, next episode's only 16, right? Yeah, 16, only 16 pages, so it's even shorter than this one. But of course, we're not done yet, because we need to go to the best place at all. We need to go to the Learning Corner. Yep, we are at the Learning Corner. Oh my goodness, look at the puppies. Look at those puppies. They're so cute. Is that my mouse there? That is my mouse there. I didn't know if that went through or if that was in the image. But today we are learning about the flat-coated retriever. It's a cute little puppo. Look at him. He's silly. We're gonna be on retrievers for a long time. With next episode's actual dog being a retriever as well, which is not going to be that big of a surprise, considering most of the retrievers. Now, look at that little puppy. And look how he's being silly with his friend. He has even bigger coat than the retriever we learned of last episode, the curly-coated retriever. So, now, Stonesy Boy reading fans, what is the history of this silly, big-haired dog? We've had retrievers from the Americas, retrievers from England, retrievers from Ireland and France. So what is the story of this retriever? Now, the history of the flat-coated retriever, it is one of the earliest uses of the retrieving dogs was to help fishermen retrieve fish and objects from the water. In the 19th century, such retrieving dogs were especially popular in the codfishes found in Newfoundland. Of these dogs, the most popular breeds were the Labrador, not to be confused with the present Labrador Retriever, and several sizes of the Newfoundlands. With development of the more advanced firearms, hunters were increasingly able to shoot on the wing, but they needed a dog to mark the fallen bird and bring it back. The fishery dogs were unrivaled swimmers and natural retrievers, and crosses between them with British breeds such the setters and pointers honed the dog's bird sense. The results of the wavy-coated retriever, and it became quite popular in America and England. In fact, it was among the earliest breeds to be shown at English dog shows. Near the end of the 1800s, crosses of the straighter-haired breed were made because of the wavy coat was thought to be less water repellent. The resulting flat-colored retrievers became tremendously popular. The breed was not recognized in the AKC until 1915, by which time it had already begun to drop in popularity by the end of the Second World War. The number of flat coats had dwindled to the point that the breed had threatened with extinction. Concerted efforts were trying to bring the breed back slowly succeeded, and the flat coat now enjoys modest popularity. So this dog used to be very popular, and is actually another type of curly-coated retriever, except, with his hair brushed. So that's kind of cute. And it was almost extinct, which was not cute, but it's still up and running. Look at these little guys. He's so silly. Now, you know the sad backstory of the flat-coated retriever and how it's basically a carbon copy of the curly-coated retriever. But what is the temperament? Is it the same temperament as the other retriever? Well, the temperament of the flat-coated retriever is sweet, exuberant, and lively dog that loves to play and retrieve. It's a go outdoors, but be quiet indoors. This breed is among the most devoted and companionable of the dogs. A true family dog, it needs regular exercise to be on its best behavior. However, it's a sensitive breed and very responsive to training. Its hallmark is wagging tail. Basically, if you want to know if he's been good or bad, it's going to wag its butt. It's going to wag its tail at you. That's the truth. Now, great family dog, great companion, but what am I going to have to do for this dog? I mean, this dog has way more hair and way more straighter hair than the curly dog, so is it going to need more grooming? Well, to answer that, the upkeep of this dog is it's an active dog and needs daily exercise and fun, especially enjoys the chance to hunt and swim. This is a family-oriented dog that is not best when allowed to live inside and play outside, and the coat needs weekly brushing and little, if any, minor trimming occasionally. So this dog is going to need a little bit more grooming and a little bit more brushing. So, hey, that sucks, but he's a good dog. Now, the health of this dog is always the worst part. I hate doing this part. But the major concerns are none. Wow. So this is a lot healthier of a dog. There's no major concerns, but there are minor concerns of CHD, glaucoma, patellar luxation, hemangorascoma, osteosarcoma, lymphosarcoma, and gastric torsion. Basically, this dog has a sensitive stomach. This dog has sensitive ears and sensitive paws, to my understanding. It's occasionally seen having seizures and diabetes. Did you know dogs can have diabetes? I didn't. And its suggested tests are eye, hip, and knee. But I would also suggest... Oh, wait, never mind. It says head. Never mind. Yep. Eye, hip, knee, and head. Cool. Now, you know the horrible test of the doggies. And now, let me tell you, what's the form and function of these dogs? I don't have a family. So, what's the form and function? Well, its power without lumber and raciness towards weakness is a traditional description of the flat-coated retriever. It's strong but elegant, never cobby, among the most streamlined of the retrievers and slightly longer than tall, of moderate substance. Its head is distinctive, long in one piece, all parts flowing smoothly into each other. The gait is ground covering, smooth and efficient. The coat is thick and flat, the only moderate length, providing protection without adding weight. These attributes have resulted in a versatile, athletic hunter capable of retrieving over land and water. So this doggy is pretty good at hunting. I think all retrievers are. I mean, they're named Retriever. But yeah, let's look at the final thing today, which is the at a glance. The energy level and... Oh yeah, right. 5 stars is it's the best or it's the worst. 4 stars means it's pretty good or it's pretty bad. 3 stars is it's average, no questions asked, it's pretty average, or it's kind of bad, 2 stars, it's kind of bad, or it's pretty good, or 1 star is it's really bad, or it's really good. Now, the energy level and exercise requirements are average. They average exercise, they run around, they fall asleep, they go, and then, they go to bed. The playfulness of this dog is at a 4, so they're very silly little puppies. The first 5-star of this channel is a affection level, so they love. They have a love affection level of 5. The friendliness towards dogs is a 3, and the friendliness towards other pets and towards strangers is a 4, which could be bad, but also could be good. The ease of training is also a 5, so these dogs are very easy to train. They are very affectionate, and they're very easy to train. The watchdog capability is a 4 too, so they might be friendly towards strangers, but if you tell them not to be, they won't be. How interesting. Their protection ability, though, is a 2, so that could be bad. So they could call someone out, but they can't attack, which sucks, but it's okay. Their grooming requirements is a 2, which fights the grooming requirements of the curly-coated retriever, which was a 1, so they need, like I said, bi-weekly or every week they need a groom, but, and back to normal, the cold tolerance and heat tolerance are at a 3, so pretty average. They can take the cold, but they don't want to. They can take the heat, but they don't want to. You get it. Now, the weight of the flat-coat retriever for both men and women should be at 60 to 70 pounds for healthiness, and for the height, a male should be 23 to 24.5 inches tall, and a female should be 22 to 23.5 inches tall. And with that out of the way, that is the end. Next episode, we have a very famous breed of retriever, which is something you're going to find out in the next reading episode. So I hope you guys have a fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.